You're listening to the Station 71 podcast with your hosts, Mario,
Beth,
Brian,
and Kirsten.
So this week we're going to take a break from our Disney in-depth tour to kind of do a little constructive episode and talk about some mistakes that Disney rookies make. This is a totally constructive episode. We are all guilty of some of these things at one point in our park-going ventures. And we just kind of wanted to take a moment to maybe bring some people down that are going on their first trips and break down some of the things that a lot of people we've seen in the parks and ourselves have experienced with some mistakes that we've made and other people have made. So you guys ready to dive into this?
Yeah.
ready.
All right. So I guess I can go over the categories and then we can all kind of just talk about things in here. That's probably the easiest way to go about this. Our first one is under planning. I think this one's probably the easiest thing to do. A lot of people think, oh, I'm going on vacation to Disney. It's all kind of right there. So Disney has a lot to offer, and I think that it's the most valuable thing to do time-wise and money-wise is to look into everything and see what you can and can't experience within your trip and kind of use that to your advantage. But that's definitely not something that everyone does, especially if it's your first time in the parks.
Yeah, I have definitely, like, when I first started going, I was guilty of this, but unfortunately, I feel like Disney has kind of made it to where there's not as much spontaneity as there used to be. So I definitely think it's important to plan enough. And I think a lot of people underestimate how expensive everything is. So it's definitely important to budget enough money.
For me, like, just working there, I don't know how many of these stories I've told. Number one, somebody came to the ticket window with tickets for Disneyland. Number two, somebody came and asked where Harry Potter World was. Like, and that happened multiple times. So like, I am totally all for if you're spontaneous and you, like, just want to figure out what you're doing every morning, and, you know, that's great. You do you. But I think that in, like, the information age, even just not simply Googling, like, Disney World at some point before your trip is, like, just a terrible, terrible mistake to make. Like, you can read for 10 minutes and figure out the basics.
Yeah. And whether or not, I know a lot of people complain about how you don't really, you have to do the planning ahead of time now. Whether or not you like that or not, I mean, that's just how the game is now, so you've got to do it. But I think under planning is the one easiest way to completely ruin a trip to Disney.
Yeah.
I think I talked about this, like, maybe last week. My aunt went on a trip last year, and they just kind of booked it. They didn't really plan anything, and I remember distinctly asking, oh, hey, are you doing this? Did you plan that? What are your meals? And she was like, oh, we're just going to go. And, like, there's a lot of things that you can wing it for. I love to wing my park trips, but there are also things that you need to plan, and I've said that a couple times, too. I'm the kind of person that'll book my fast passes in the park, which I know isn't the way that everyone tours. But that's just a system that's worked for me specifically. Not to confuse anyone and say that you need to just plan everything, but definitely looking into everything at least and saying, okay, well, maybe I want to do X, Y, and Z. You don't have to go by the unofficial guide or, like, any Disney touring books that you see in, like, a bookstore. You can literally go on Disney's website and see, this is what they offer, this is what we can do. And it's as simple as taking maybe 15 minutes a day before, like, the first week of your, well, not even the first week, because you got to book a lot of things in advance now. But, take the extra time to just say, I want to eat here, I want to ride this ride. And knowing that in advance will definitely help you out.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people definitely underestimate that.
Mm-hmm.
That said, you can also ruin your trip by over-planning. Taking that time to just kind of run with it and plan every second of your day, you're going to put yourself on such a tight schedule that it's very unrealistic to just go in, be in line for this ride for 15 minutes, and then as soon as you get off, go ride the ride in the next part of your plan. If you have every second of your day mapped out, you're not going to see everything you wanted to, and then you're probably going to complain about the crowds.
Mm-hmm.
So that is my whole thing with that.
Yeah. I've definitely been guilty of this more so than under planning. And it gets super frustrating when you have this expectation and then it's not met. So I've found like a way to kind of ease that, because I'm like a super planner and I want to plan everything. So what I do now is I still like plan everything, but I have like 3 things that I'm like, these are the things I'm getting done. And that's it. And if I get other stuff in, cool. But you have to leave room for error, because, and especially when you're using Disney transportation, you know.
I give people pretty similar advice. I say that you should know what you want to do ahead of time, but honestly, the only thing that you should set in stone, in my opinion, for your schedule would be your 3 advanced fast passes and any ADR reservation that you have. Because honestly, the other stuff, schedules are going to change, wait times are going to change, weather could impact it, and if you go in wanting to do everything in a specific order, it's probably not going to be the most efficient way to do it, depending on when you go. So on top of all the stress that it's going to cause you, you really might not be able to get things done as quickly if you do overplan, because a lot of times when I go, I kind of, go with the ebb and flow of how the parks are going and what has the long wait time, and I kind of adjust what I want to do. I know stuff I want to get done throughout the day, but I kind of use the wait times for the rides or anything else to decide when I go to do these things. So I'm definitely not an over planner. I used to be more into that, but I try to tell people don't plan past what you can actually set the times for.
I think that's probably the best advice, is to book your ADR, or to worry about your ADRs and your fast passes, because that's the only definites.
Yeah. What I used to tell people was, like, decide what's the most important thing to you. Like, if you're a family of 4, like, everybody pick, their number 1 and number 2 things they want to do in the park, and, like, make sure you get those done. Don't wait till the end of the day, but don't expect to, like, go in and get everything done. And as far as I'm definitely a pretty detailed planner, but how I kind of get around that is I'll say, okay, so we're going to go to the Fantasyland area, and, like, I'll just write down my list, like, things we want to accomplish there. Like, okay, Space Mountain, Buzz, People Mover if there's time. Instead of saying, okay, so first we're going to go ride this at this exact time, and then we're going to get off and walk here and then ride this. Like, but I do try to keep it in the general area, just so that you're not, like, backtracking back and forth all day, because that's exhausting too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's easier to overplan when you have someone that, like, that goes to Disney fairly often. Where if you've heard of the extensivity of, like, is that even a word? How extensive everything is when it comes to planning, because you can make your trip as in-depth or laid back as you want it to be. And I think that's the thing that people just don't realize, is that, you want to plan all 3 of your fast passes, you want to hit these major rides, that's what you have to do. You have to plan your passes that way. And you have to set the days that you want around your fast passes. There's just no breaking that. But if you don't really care, if you're like, I kind of want to experience this ride, and then, like, the other 2 can fall into whatever ones, sometimes that works for you. It's all about finding that nice level of planning, and a lot of people just don't really look into it like that.
There's a sweet spot for sure, and I am very against over planning, but I will say you can over plan and show up at Disney and say, you know what, we don't need to do this as strict of a schedule as I have planned. But if you show up and you haven't planned anything out, you can't really go back on that. So I would say err on the side of over planning a bit, and you can always dial it back, but you can't go back 60 days and make fast pass selections. Mm-hmm. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And also, I think another thing people don't think about is how long it takes to eat in one of the restaurants. and the fact that like people think I made a 3:00 reservation, so I walk up at 2:55 and they seat me exactly at 3, and it doesn't always work like that. So I feel like a lot of people make that mistake as well when they're trying to plan every second. They leave themselves, this hour to eat, but it's maybe they don't get seated until 20 minutes after their reservation time.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to stop you and talk about something that I find that's really helpful. A lot of people book through the app and the website. I personally always tell a person that's going for their first time. I had a friend that I helped her book her entire trip for the first time she'd ever done it herself. I told her, get up in the morning and instead of going on the website, call the Disney dining number. And she was like, why? I can do it all online. And I was like, but you have that person there to tell you when you need to show up at the restaurant, what time your reservation is, and any details that you need. You're not going to have that online. I kind of miss when that was the case, like when you would have to book it on the phone lines, just because like people underestimate the value of having that person there to tell you, okay, well, your reservation's at 5, but show up at 4:30 or whatever. Like, there are specific times, and if you're not there, they charge you for it. Like, there's no way around that.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that because this past weekend, me and my dad and my boyfriend booked our Epcot dive for February, and I'm really glad that wasn't available to be made online because the girl on the phone told us way more information than I had picked up on, even as much as I read about the dive. It's just like, for example, you're not allowed to wear any jewelry. And I was like, at all? Like anything? And she's like, except for a dive watch. And I was like, all right, well, that's something I need to know. I'd make sure I don't wear any like earrings, and I have my nose pierced, so I need to take those out. And that's something that I would have just totally showed up unprepared for if I hadn't had to call and make that reservation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, I think people just don't realize that Disney employees have all that information there for you. Like, it's a valuable resource. Utilize it.
For sure.
So do we want to move on to the next one, or does anyone else have anything about over-planning you want to touch on?
No, but I do think the next one kind of ties right into over-planning in a way.
Yeah, for sure. Overdoing it. And by that, we mean just pushing yourself to, I'm going to steal Kirsten's quote here, to get that value, to get your money's worth out of your trip. My latest experience with taking someone to the parks for the first time, I took my girlfriend on her first ever trip, and when we got there, she obviously let me plan everything that I kind of wanted to, that I thought she would want to, but then she realized that there was so much to do, and she felt overwhelmed. And I told her, listen, step back, have fun. Well, there's always time to come back. And I know that some people look at Disney as like that once-in-a-lifetime vacation, but you'll get your money's out of it one way or another. It's more important to have fun than to just kind of try to do everything. That's a surefire way to ruin your trip.
I used to see families all the time with like little kids, and it's like late, they haven't had a nap, but that your parent, like the parents are thinking about how much money they spend and they want like their kids to experience it all. But like nobody is enjoying that. Like I know if like you spend all this money and your kid is like being unappreciative, it really sucks, but they don't know any better. Like they can't appreciate that. I mean, at a certain age they can, but when they're little. And so, like, it's so much better to just, like, go back in the afternoon and everybody take a nap and then go back for the fireworks, or leave early and skip the fireworks, because, like, that's what you're going to want to remember. Like, you don't want to remember standing in the middle of Main Street screaming at your child who is screaming. Like, that's
exactly.
not fun.
Someone that I work with actually just went to Disney a few months ago, and when he got back, I was like, oh, how's your trip? And he's like, oh, it was pretty good, except for I think we did it a little too hard at Magic Kingdom, and my daughter ended up sobbing at the beginning of the fireworks, so we had to leave. I was like, oh, well, that's the detail that you point out when I ask how your trip went.
I hate to say this, but whenever I hear someone say, oh, it was good, but it's always followed by something that can be prevented.
Yeah.
Like, I I think that's just important to note. Not saying that like you're doing it wrong if you have a butt that you come back from, but unless it was something that like a cast member was rude, and 9 out of 10 times that doesn't happen. Like it's mostly stuff that can be prevented, or is just it's a rookie mistake. We've all made them.
Yeah.
But I think overdoing it is one that a lot of people, like I said, just try to get the most bang for their buck out of it, and it just never works out well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know the go-to suggestion for this is to, leave around midday, go back to your hotel, and go to the pool, and that's fine. If you are the kind of person that likes to hit the parks harder, though, if you're in Magic Kingdom, take time, go to Tom Sawyer Island or something, and just chill out on one of the rocking chairs for a little bit. There's plenty of places in every park that you can just find a spot to take some downtime with. So if you are the kind of person that likes to hit the parks hard, don't feel like, oh, if I go back to the resort and take a nap or something, I'm going to lose all this time. If, that's fine. A lot of people like to do that. But if you are the kind of person that likes to do it, still take time to give yourself a break at some point during the day if you are going to be at the parks all day.
Yeah, and you go to like a resort that's close by and sit in the lobby on a bench, in the air conditioning. Like, there are other places you can go.
Or even to that point, like, if you want some air conditioning, go through a gift shop. There are plenty of those. And, window shopping's fun if you're not going to be spending a lot of money on that trip. Like, you can look around at the souvenirs that maybe you want to price out and decide on later. It doesn't take a lot of time to just stop and enjoy yourself. And make sure that you're safe.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's a vacation. Like, do it however works for you, but I don't think anybody has ever had achy feet and said that was a fun part of their trip.
So do you want to take that time to just transition into the next one?
Yes.
Which I think this definitely deserved a category of its own. New shoes.
Oh, I made this mistake.
Disney is a place you will be walking for a lot of times. Like, a lot of the time you're in the park, you are going to be on your feet, you're going to be moving. Like, there's just so much time you're going to spend walking. And if you don't break in your shoes before you go, if you don't wear shoes that you're comfortable in, like, it's just not going to be a good time.
Yeah. I mentioned this on the last podcast. I just did this the last time I went for the Halloween party. I wore these costume boots, and I thought, oh, it'll be okay. And I seriously, my feet, I don't know if my feet have ever been in that much pain before after I got done walking around Magic Kingdom that night. So... Aww. I know everybody wants to get new shoes for vacation and take pictures in the parks and everything, but please do yourself a favor. I don't think you understand how bad it will be if you're halfway through the day and you've already got blisters all over your feet and you know that you're having to stay the other half of the day at the parks.
I've also heard a really good piece of advice that I picked up was if you are going to take that midday break, like, change shoes when you go. Like, because you're wearing these hot, sweaty shoes, and if you have, like, a fresh pair that's been sitting in air conditioning, it does wonders for your feet. I tried it on my last trip, and it was amazing.
I never would have thought of that.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
Yeah, they'd probably, if you're getting a blister somewhere on your feet, and another pair would probably, have different, like, pressure points on your feet that would help with that, too. So it's a good tip.
So after that, we have forgetting to use your discounts. Actually, let's just broaden that to not looking for discounts in general. Like, there's plenty of things that Disney offers if it's vacation packages, and there's plenty of things. I don't think we should even go into the list of them because they're all pretty much laid out for you as well.
Yeah.
Unless there's, like, specific ones you guys want to touch on. I don't want to steal anyone's thunder on that one.
Well, I specifically, being an annual pass holder, you get a lot of discounts at different stores and restaurants and wherever. And I've just gotten into the habit of everywhere I go, do you guys have an annual pass holder discount? And the worst thing they can do is say no. But if you don't ask and then you find out later, wow, I could have saved $10 back there. That sucks. You know, and I've done it before. I have been just like looking around online and seeing like, oh, you can get an annual pass holder discount here. And I'm like, man, I bought like a $50 souvenir there and I could have saved money on it. That's lame.
Yeah.
You know, you're right. It doesn't hurt to ask. We've been in a couple situations where, like, we have the Disney Visa, and even using that could have saved us money, but we just didn't think about it. Like, you know, if you don't ask, you don't know.
Yeah, and whoever put Mouse Savers on there, that website is so good. Like and it explains everything really, really well. If you don't know how the tickets work, like I think that's like a great resource. I just used them to book my hotel for November, and I got it for like $100 at least off for like 2 nights.
Nice.
That's really good. Really good.
Another one that I know a lot of people might not think to look at, and Beth, I saw that you put this down, but it's student discounts, and not just through like Florida colleges or high schools or anything. I'm from Georgia originally, and a few years ago when me and my fiance were both in college, we got tickets to go to Disney through her school, and like without the discount that we got on those tickets, we probably wouldn't have been able to afford the trip. And it's not something that a lot of places really, you know, talk about or advertise that much, but check with your school. I know some workplaces do too, especially if you, work with something that might be like government associated. A lot of those places will give discounts on tickets like this. So check that out. Worst case, they don't, but it's definitely worth looking into.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that money you save can go towards something else.
Yep.
They could go towards that extra dining. It could go towards your souvenirs. There's a lot of things, and cost is a big factor at Disney. So that may actually even be the tipping point to someone not booking a trip. So we got, after that, not utilizing Magic Band capabilities. This is a really good one. I don't know who put this one down, but I really like this one. Disney's come such a long way with Magic Band, My Magic Plus, and all the the technological stuff that they have now. It's just so much easier than it used to be.
Yeah, I see this question all the time, specifically on the Walt Disney World subreddit. People saying, oh, well, I'm staying off property. I don't need a Magic Band, do I? And I'm always like, yes. Like, the last time I went was the first time I've ever stayed on property, and I've had Magic Bands since the very beginning because it's just so convenient to have this thing on your wrist that acts as your park entry. It keeps your fast passes. If you have Memory Maker, your photo pass photos, and especially if you have a large group or you're keeping track of a bunch of little kids, that's crucial to just put this on your wrist and then don't touch it instead of having to dig 5 cards out of your wallet every single time.
Yeah.
Well, and even then, the Magic Band 2.0s, there's plenty of ways to store that. So if you don't like things on your wrist, they got you covered.
Yep.
Actually, side note, gonna totally deviate from that. I saw this nifty little thing. I can't remember if it was on Facebook or Reddit, but it was a Magic Band puck keeper that attaches to Apple Watch bands. And
oh, wow.
As someone that has an Apple Watch and uses it pretty regularly, having 2 things, one on each wrist, is very annoying. Super cool. If I can remember to look for it, I'll put a link in the show notes for that.
That is cool. But I think it's obviously, like I said, staying off property, I would still recommend getting one. But when I stayed on property, I didn't realize how truly amazing it is to have, well, it's a double-edged sword, to link your credit card, because it's so easy to pay, but it's also really easy to just touch that little Magic Band and forget how much money you're spending.
It's so hard to keep track of. Or harder, I guess.
I think that's one of those things that, you have to know yourself, because we tried it the last time. It was the first time we ever did it, and we spent way too much money. And I think Disney kind of relies on you to do that, but it's a nice thing to do if you can definitely remember to control it.
I will say that it was really useful when I went to the pool because we were staying at Riverside and we wanted to go use the pool at French Quarter. And so literally all we took was we put on our bathing suits and went and rented bikes, and all we had was our Magic Band, and that's it. And so that's how we rented the bikes. That's how we paid for drinks at the pool bar. That's how we got, and it's your key to your room, so we didn't have to worry about losing our key card because we had it on our hand.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just so easy to use. And even stepping aside from the Magic Band, the fact that you can now book your fast passes from your phone, you can you don't have to carry those Key to the Kingdom cards. It's just tap it to the pedestal and walk in. Like, there's just so much that Disney is doing to make it just one less thing you have to carry, or one less thing that you really have to worry about. Even though we just talked about how you can book things extensively, I think the way that they're moving with technology and the way that they're utilizing all the things that we definitely take for granted, I think, as people that go a lot, it's making it so much easier if you know about them.
Yeah. And then I mentioned, I guess this kind of goes with not utilizing Magic Band, but utilizing, I guess, what Disney offers is PhotoPass. I have not done the Memory Maker since they added that, but we did whatever the thing was they had before where you paid, one fee for all the pictures. I think that it's worth it to decide before your trip or maybe on the first day if you want to get that or not, and then take a picture with like every PhotoPass person you see. Take advantage of all the magic shots, everything, to like actually make it worth it. Whenever we went and Will proposed, he proposed the first morning of our first day, and so then and he had a guy taking pictures, so obviously we were gonna buy him. So we were like, okay, well, let's just pay for the whole PhotoPass thing, and then we took a picture with like every PhotoPass photographer that we saw the whole trip to like get our money's worth out of that.
Yeah.
Well, even if you book it beforehand, there's a discount. I think it's for booking it before you go. I can't remember if it's before or
it's 3 days before your trip.
Yeah, it's like a $10 discount, and $10 saves you a lot of money.
It's actually $30, believe it or not.
Really? I thought it was less.
$30 off, and you just have to buy it 3 days before your trip.
Even better.
Yeah.
So what is the price to get Memory Maker now?
$199.
That's per day or per...
It's a flat one.
For a trip?
Yeah, it's for your, I think it's up to 14 days or something, maybe.
Oh, wow.
But...
See, because this was included with, the APs, and this was something that before I had my pass, I didn't think I would care about at all. And now that I have it, I do. I take advantage of it whenever I can, and it's very, very cool to not have to, worry about each picture or be worried about if each picture that you do want comes out okay. You just tap and go and come back later if you want it. And I would say that, yeah, at that price, if you're staying for more, than 5 days, it would probably be worth it to go ahead and invest in that, especially if you're the kind of person that likes pictures from a vacation.
Yeah. And it's also, with the rides that don't have a touch style to put your Magic Band or key card up to, it automatically will link it, and then you also get, ride videos and ride photos included in that, which I think is a great perk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually a 30-day window that you get the pictures for.
Oh, okay.
Which is nice, because then you just come right home, you download the files to your computer, and you have them forever. Now, I will say, as someone that takes a camera to the park, if you decide it's not worth it to do the Memory Maker, you can give cast members your camera or phone, and they will take your picture. I know that I've heard people say that they were afraid to ask because they had their own camera. They thought they were just there for the pictures that you would pay for. But you can hand them your camera and say, hey, can you take a picture? Granted, they're going to take more pictures with the Memory Maker. So you're going to get better shots. You're going to get more photos. And you'll get the ride photos because that's not something that you can obviously take a picture on. But if you did want to save that little bit of money and you did decide it wasn't worth it for you, definitely ask them.
Small tip though, make sure you have your settings already set.
Yes.
Because they will not do that and your photos will not come out.
Well, and the other thing is they're trained to use their cameras. A lot of the times the people that are in PhotoPass are not professional photographers. Granted, you have the exceptions. But sometimes they're just college kids that applied for the role and they got it for the college program. It happens. And you can't be mad if your settings weren't set right and they took the picture because that's just what they know.
Yeah, for sure.
But anything else on that one, or I think that's pretty much a good summary of that. The next one we have is carrying around souvenirs. I guess do they really tell you about this one? Because I feel like I only heard about it because one of our first major trips with my mom's whole family, we were in the Lego store in downtown Disney, and my dad bought a giant Lego train, and they were like, you don't have to carry that around, we can just send that back to your room. And that was like the first time we heard it, and it was at the end of our trip.
Yeah.
I
think the first time I heard about it was I said something like, oh, I need to, like, I'll come back later and get this. And they're like, you can get it now and have it sent to the front of the park because I wasn't staying on property. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, okay. So I always utilize that. I think that's a great feature, especially when you have something big like a Lego train set or whatever.
Yeah, that was like a weird thing to find out at the very end of your trip because it's like, oh, well, I guess we could have been doing that all along. The other thing that they do that we didn't put on here, if you're buying something large and you know that it's going to be big enough that it might not fit in your suitcase or you're worried about it getting damaged on the ride home, Disney will mail stuff home for you. It is going to cost you, but it is an option.
Yes, I've done that before, and it worked very well. It was not a hassle at all.
Yeah, we bought prints from one of the art stores. We bought like 4 of them the last time we were there, and we sent them home because we spent money on it, didn't want to, risk it getting damaged on the plane ride because sometimes they're not careful with your luggage. And it made it about a week after we got home. Like, it wasn't very long at all.
That's cool. Another thing I want to say is that if you buy something and you decide later that you want to have it sent to the front of the park or back to your resort, as long as you still have your receipt and it still has like the barcode somewhere on it, like the box or the bottom of it or whatever, they'll still take it and they'll still send it wherever you want to. So you don't have to decide like right then.
I didn't know that they did that.
I only found out because when I did my annual pass holder preview for Pandora, I was one of the nerds walking around with a little shoulder banshee. And after a couple hours of that, I was like, I don't really want to carry this anymore. So I went and asked, and they're like, yeah, we can send it to the front of the park. I was like, okay, cool. But just make sure you don't wait too long too close to park closing, because I think they have like a 3-hour window where it has to be like 3 hours before park closing that you have to send your packages. And also...
Yeah, and there is a day limit on that too. So you have to do it 2 days before you check out. So you can't buy something at like 7 p.m. and then you're checking out the next day. It has to be like the day before that.
Yeah, I found that out the hard way on my last trip because I was like, oh, my dad is a elementary school principal and he wanted a Banshee, so he asked me to pick him up one, and I tried to get them to send it back to Riverside, and they're like, okay, well, but it won't be there until like day after tomorrow, and I was like, okay, well, I'll leave tomorrow, I guess I'm carrying this around.
I think kind of tying that back into another point that we said before is like this information is for the most part out there. If you just take some time to like look for it, you'll find it. And even saving those couple minutes, booking your trip, or researching something like this that maybe you wouldn't have even really thought about. It's there. Places like Facebook groups for Disney, the Walt Disney World subreddit, like there's a lot of communities out there for people like us and people that enjoy the Disney parks. The information is so valuable and it's so easily accessible.
Yeah, and people are super willing as well. Like, right. I see people on the subreddit all the time, like, hey, critique my schedule. And people will go to town on it. They'll, like, break it apart and say, like, this will work, but this is not going to work, and give them suggestions. It's pretty cool.
And, kind of, like, off of that a little bit, if you feel like you're overwhelmed by the information, a lot of travel agencies don't charge for their services. They make the money from Disney. Yeah, most of them don't. A lot of them will make the money back from Disney through like a travel agent program that they have. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, find a travel agent. They will help you 100%.
Yeah, and I feel like most people who like Disney World want other people to have fun. Like if somebody that I know, just like as an acquaintance or whatever, asks me, like I'll do as much or as little as they want. Like we love it and we want other people to love it too. Like I don't know very many people who you could ask for advice and they would be like, I don't have time to help you, or I don't want to help you. Like even cast members, like once you get there, most of them want you to have fun.
And even like, people like us, send us emails. We'll help you out if we can. If, we can read your emails on the show and stuff like that, help you plan your trip. Like, people that love Disney are so ready to help everyone and so ready to kind of like give you those pointers. I don't think I've ever met a person in like the Disney parks community that's just been flat out rude about like, hey, I need help. Yeah. And even as someone that's gone to Disney for like most of my life, there are still times where I ask questions and I get friendly answers.
So now that we've talked about how awesome the community is, let's talk about the other side.
That's a great segue. I don't even know how to like really bring this up.
I wasn't planning on this to kind of take off into a rant fest for us, but I do think that a lot of these mistakes are rookies that are doing this. I like to think that it's people that are like new to coming to Disney, not people that go there all the time and they just don't care and they do this anyways. But this little section I just called ruining other people's time, and it's just kind of stuff that you should kind of
just don't do
not be oblivious to yourself if you're doing this. I understand that when people come to Disney, they want to get everything out of the vacation and that it's expensive, and that when they do this, there's it's easy to be selfish to yourself and make sure that you're getting what you want. And that's understandable. But at the same time, I think a lot of these things are people taking it and not caring that there are thousands of other people in the park at the same time that are also trying to do the same thing.
Be considerate. That's the easiest way to just say this.
Yes.
Like, you have to realize, like you said, you're not the only one here. Disney is for everyone.
Be aware of yourself in proximity to others.
And your children.
Yeah. Yes. Well, and most of the stuff that I put in this section, this is stuff that I considered is making it worse for yourself too. So like number one that I have on this is taking flash pictures on a dark ride. So one, this completely ruins any of the immersion that Disney has worked on in these rides for everybody else. It is one of the, it has to be the single most like jarring thing that takes you out of the magic of Disney. I feel like when you're on a ride is somebody taking flash pictures. Like I would honestly rather the ride get stuck down, like shut down for a minute and pick back up, than someone in front of me or behind me be taking flash pictures constantly. The other thing is that...
Hold on, stop from there, because I want to touch on that a little bit. like you said, Disney set up a lot of things to kind of immerse you in this environment. There are things that you're not meant to see.
Yes.
And we've talked about this before, Disney designs everything in a stage manner. There's a backstage element that most people don't want to see.
Mm-hmm.
So now
there's a reason they are dark rides,
right?
That they're not meant to be lit up. And the biggest thing that it kind of makes me laugh, but it also makes me kind of annoyed at the same time, is that I think people don't realize, like, on that same note, these pictures that you're taking, that you're trying to save, are not meant to be lit this way.
Right.
So you are not getting a good picture of the ride when you're doing this. If you're using a flash, they have the lighting. And I know obviously that the camera doesn't pick up everything that the eye does, and that it is slightly different, but you are not meant to be seeing things in the light of a flash, which is why the rides are dark. But number one, the biggest thing that kills me, and this doesn't even really go just for Disney or anything, I see so many people just like living through the lens of their camera, and this it's just, and I don't mean to say that, like, I know you're into photography and everything, Mario, but this is people that like they get on a ride and they film the whole thing, and then they film getting off of it, and then they film walking through the park, and then they film getting on the next ride. I feel like you miss so much of being at Disney if you're so worried about watching it later. Like, you need to make the memories there, and it's fine to take pictures and look back and say, oh, remember that. But I feel like if you're so set on having the memory stored on a phone, you're not making any of them in the actual park.
You know what? I'm going to actually agree with you 100% on that. When I go on a dark ride, and this is me as someone that goes to Disney frequently, I will be that person that will take pictures on the ride. I'm not going to use flash because, like I said before, there are things that you're not meant to see. However, I am going to take back on what you said about how your camera cannot pick up a lot of what your eye is going to see. A lot of modern cameras can actually pick up the rides, the attractions, if you know how to use them. Most DSLR cameras are set that they have a low light function. It's fairly easy to get those dark ride shots. Now, that said, that is probably one of the harder shots to take on a Disney trip. It's possible, though. But I've made the mistake of living through my lens on a lot of trips, and it's very regrettable the second you get home, because you think about it, and all of that time just flew right by you.
But I do feel like 9 times out of 10, the people taking pictures and videos on rides are not trying to do it for photography's sake. They're not trying to do it for, composition. They're just trying to, like, take the picture so they can put it on Facebook or whatever.
They did it for the gram.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that is so annoying, and it's so inconsiderate. It really is. Whenever we were there in May, we rode Under the Sea Adventure, whatever it's called, Ariel. I can never remember the name of it. There's too many rides or things with that. Anyway, and this girl had her iPhone out, and she had the flash on, like, where it will stay lit up, and she was videoing the entire thing. And, like, it's just like, why? Like, why are you doing that? It's so rude. Like, nobody around you is enjoying this. And 2, are you really going to go home and watch it again? Like, are you really going to? No.
Yeah.
Like,
Probably
and it's
not.
just like
Doubt it.
fireworks, too. Like, fireworks videos on your phone suck. Why are you taking that? Like, enjoy it. Fireworks are not something that are very enjoyable in a video. Like, they are something you need to be present for.
Yeah.
Just to speak on that, can I tell you even worse, in my opinion, than filming the fireworks is FaceTiming someone the fireworks, because I have seen this before and it drove me nuts. I just can't imagine why you would want to. And my other thing is, there are 10,000 4K videos on YouTube of every attraction and fireworks show that Disney has ever made. Well, at least since 4K was a thing. So someone has a better photo, a better video than you.
Yeah.
Like, if you're trying to take it so that you can watch it later and relive that, watch one of those on YouTube, because it's gonna be better than yours most likely, and you're gonna just be like, oh wow, like recorded this whole thing and it looks like garbage.
You know what? I want to add something to this list that I didn't even think of before. And it kind of goes in with this a little bit maybe, but try not to live your vacation for someone that's not on the vacation with you. This is like a totally like niche thing, but my little cousin had a like her best friend at the time on our last trip had never been to Disney. So what she did was every time we went through a meet and greet area, she made everyone stop. She made everyone wait for her to go through the lines for all the meet and greets that she wanted to, and it wasn't for her. It wasn't that she wanted to meet them. It wasn't that she was going because she wanted the picture or whatever. Like, that would have been different because she was physically there. It was a trip for our family. She's part of the family. Instead, she was going through and she was taking a video of every one of the princesses and having them say hi to her friend. Not to call her out or anything, I doubt she's listening, but that was one of those things that, like, if you're with a party of people, not being considerate to the people you're with, even if they're not, like, you know, let's not limit this to just outside guests of your party. Think about your party as well.
Yeah. I think that would be forgivable if she did it maybe once or twice, but, like, if it's as often as you are making it out to be, then that's really obnoxious. Like, I mean, I'll definitely take a few minutes. Like, my family is German, so when I'm in Germany at Epcot, I'll FaceTime my mom, you know, but I'm off to the side where I'm not blocking anyone's way, I'm not annoying anybody, but that's about as far as I'll go for people that aren't on the trip with me.
Right. You know.
Yeah. My friend, when she worked there, she did, before our wedding, go meet a few princesses and have them tell us, like, you know, yay, you're getting married, congratulations. But she worked there, so obviously she could do it, like, and not
You're
irritate
not on a
anybody
time
else.
Right.
Right.
So, I guess we can kind of take this one in a different direction than how you wrote it. But let's put this as we'll go with what we said before. Be considerate to everyone around you. Don't be like screaming so loud that, you know, other guests are going to get annoyed. Don't be like, you know, if your friend's 5 feet from you, be aware of that noise volume. Just kind of don't be loud. Don't ruin what's going on around you, because a lot of times, like, there's a lot of streetmosphere stuff in Disney that, you know, it's there, you want to be paying attention to it. If you're watching the parade and someone that's standing 2 feet from you is screaming so loud that the person 5 feet from you can hear them, that person doesn't want to hear your conversation. But that's kind of a rule for everywhere, so we won't really stay on that very long.
Well, so just one more thing, and I just thought of this one too, and I see it a fairly decent amount at Disney, but, like, watch your language around children and people. Like, I feel like that shouldn't even need to really be said. Like, I know a lot of people say, "Oh, Disney's for kids," and I'm firmly against that. Like, Disney is for everybody, but at the same time, there are a lot of kids there, and just be considerate. You know, and it's one thing if you're by yourself at a table somewhere away from everybody, but you know, if you're in line and you know you're surrounded by kids, like, just have a little bit of consideration for them.
Yeah. And also in that same vein, try not to let those types of people ruin your time. I know it's really hard, but just try to tune them out. Try to focus on something else, because there's nothing worse than someone else ruining your vacation. Like, it's bad enough if you ruin your own, but letting someone else ruin it is even worse.
Yep. That's perfectly said. Yeah.
The next three are mine. This just comes from my experience as an employee. And honestly, what most of these experiences come from are parade audience control, which y'all know, if it's crowded, like 4th of July, etc., it can be crazy. So whenever, and I just see this a lot, I hear this a lot, people don't really understand. Whenever you're like, everybody's getting into position for like the parade and the fireworks, there are a lot of cast members with lights, and they have everything taped off, blocked off, and you like, they will say like, you can't stand here. People line up really early for this stuff, and they have walkways for a reason. It's like a fire hazard. It's a safety issue. They are not letting you stand there because they want to ruin your trip. Like, they're doing it because it is a law. And I saw like people yelled at me, like really tall dads, like in my face screaming at me. Like, people get so intense about this, and they're like, everybody paid a lot to come to the parks. Everybody wants to have a good trip. Everybody's there to have fun. Like, and most employees want you to have the best trip ever. So whenever they're saying like, hey, you can't do this, hey, your kid cannot sit on a trash can, hey, you can't stand there and watch the fireworks, like, they're doing it for a reason. They're not just doing it, and like, try to keep that in mind. Like, there are reasons behind, there's a method to the madness.
And kind of to that, as someone that's worked retail a lot, they're just people too. Like, no one wants to be screamed at when they're just coming into work. And a lot of these cast members love their jobs. Like, everyone that I've talked to, for the most part, has just genuinely enjoyed working at Disney. But you get that one bad guest, and it could ruin your day for you. You just got to be considerate of that as well.
For sure. Like, I know you're definitely supposed to leave your personal life at the door, but there are sometimes, like, that's really hard. Just as a personal example, whenever I was working there was when my mother-in-law was dying of cancer, and, like, obviously that was tough. Like, luckily I didn't really have a whole lot of situations where people were very rude to me, but, you just have to, like, think about it.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remember, cast members are humans, too. Like, they're not put there for you to yell at them for whatever you feel fit.
Oh, I just put down kids on shoulders. It's a controversial topic. Like, I understand. I have a child now. Like, I understand I want him to see and enjoy everything when he's sentient. But, like, I think it's whenever people are waiting and, like, you get there 30 minutes in advance, you're like, yeah, I got a good spot. And then 2 seconds before the fireworks, the parade, whatever starts, somebody puts their kid on the shoulders right in front of you. It's very frustrating, like, especially when you're just a short adult. Like, I know kids want to see, and I understand that, but everybody wants to see. Like, if you're going to put your kid on your shoulders, you should stand that way the entire time, so that whoever stands behind you understands what they're getting into.
Yeah. Or no, there are places, around the perimeter of the hub, or near some of the planters and everything where there are, like, trees behind you, where it's fine if you do want to give your kid a better viewing and put them on your shoulders. Do it at one of those places where you're not going to be blocking, probably a lot of other kids behind you that aren't going to get to see it. So and like Kirsten said, I know everybody wants to, make this experience special for their kids, but just realize that there are a lot of other kids there too. So don't make their experience worse because you're so worried about having your kids be the best.
Mm-hmm. And also think of it from a safety standpoint. Is like, I've never worked at Disney, but I volunteer at a zoo, and when I see that, it just makes my heart stop. I'm just like, if this kid falls, their head is gonna crack open, and I can't imagine how cast members feel having to tell people, like, hey, I don't want your kid to get hurt, constantly.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we've said it a couple times now, just be considerate. Like, think about how you would feel if someone had their child on their shoulders in front of you.
Yeah.
That's basically what all these rules, or not rules, but what all of these last few things we've talked about come down to, is like, just be considerate. Like,
yeah, definitely. I think we should kind of, you already started to touch on this one, the whole listen to cast members, but I want to take a step back on that and just say, like, sometimes cast members will give you valuable advice that no one else can. So if you take that time to just listen to them, listen to what they're saying, like, instead of getting mad that they say, oh, you can't sit here because this is a spot that's restricted on the parade route, okay, well, where can I go?
Yeah.
They'll help you. They're not there to ruin your vacation, like you said, Kirsten.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, my best experiences were when, like, a guest would not be that busy or just be waiting and would just, like, start talking to me. Like, and I could give them advice, you know, things would come up. And, like, actually the person who asked me, it was around parade time one day and it was raining, and she asked me, when is it going to stop raining? And I kind of looked at her and I was like, and then she's like, oh, that was a stupid question. But then we just started talking, like, and I told her, like, I asked what she was doing the rest of her trip and, like, gave her my thoughts and asked how old her kids were. Like, you know, they want to help you. Like, they're just people. They're, like, have fun with them. They love it whenever they have a fun family and they get to have, you know, fun with family and joke around with, like, the kids and the parents. Like, it's so much fun. That's what I loved about working there. Like, I always tell everybody it had, like, the worst hours, like, the worst paid, but it was the, like, most fun I've ever had.
Well, and, you know, coming from the other side of it as a guest, you know, Disney is awesome. And I have so much fun there. But when I look back, like, it sounds cliche, but really the truly, like, magical experiences that I've had there have almost always been because of something a cast member has done for me. A cast member going above and beyond, going the extra mile to make sure that either a problem was fixed or that just to do something cool for me as a guest. So, like, if they're trying to get you to do something, don't think that they're doing this to, you know, just suck all the fun out of it, because they're not. Just remember that they're there, and, you know, Kirsten, I'm sure you can attest to this. Like, I don't think anybody really works at Disney just to have a job, you know. Almost everyone that works there, I have to feel like they do it because that's what they want to do. They want to interact with people, and they want the guests to have a good time.
Yeah.
So just, you know, treat the cast members with respect, and if they're telling you to do stuff, just know that they're doing it for the benefit of everyone at Disney.
Yeah, and even if you, I don't know, can't fathom doing it of your own accord, just keep in mind that you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, and a cast member is going to be extremely more willing to bend over backwards for you if you're nice to them, rather than being rude. And that just goes for customer service in general for anyone who's wondering.
I like the Station 71 podcast, Lessons on Morality. That's what it's called.
Well, we can actually start to kind of tie this up then, because we're getting pretty close to our end mark. But all that said, everything that we said, even if it sounds a little ranty, just remember, we've been there, we've done it. Some of this stuff, obviously, like, you know, I don't think I've ever been, like, screaming at a cast member or anything. But at the same time, like, it happens. It's not something that we're going to shy away from. We'll tie it up with that. Just be considerate of everyone. Remember, it might be your first trip. It's been the person next to you's first trip at some point, too. Even if it is this trip for them as well. Everyone's there to have fun. Disney doesn't belong to one person, one family. It's a thing for everyone. So I think that's a nice thing to remember and a nice thing to kind of tie this whole conversation up. We're not here to just kind of attack people and say, hey, you know, you're making mistakes. This is how you're supposed to do Disney. We don't want anyone to think that. We want to help everyone kind of avoid the mistakes that we've made, the mistakes that we've seen, and kind of help other people. Like we said before, you know, we want to give you those suggestions that we think might make your trip a little bit better. And on that note, I'm going to say it again at the end of this episode. If you have questions, station71podcast@gmail.com. We still haven't been getting any emails in lately, so to, you know, get one of those in, we'll take the time to read it on the show so that the next time you listen in, you'll have your answer. We will probably even respond to you before then, just so that you have it if your trip's coming up. But everyone is really nice. Everyone is more than willing to go out of their way to help you. It's just valuable to ask those questions. So that said, does anyone else have anything that they want to say before we tie this up?
I don't think so. I don't want to end on like a bad note. I feel like we did this because like we want everybody to have fun. Like that's why we love Disney. That's why we're doing this, is because we want everybody to love Disney as much as we do. So, we mean well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the best way that we should tie it up, is we should say, hey, we do mean well. Because someone's going to come off and read this as, wow, they hate all of these rookie mistakes. We don't. We really don't.
No, we just want you to come away from, like, if somebody's listening to this and going on their first trip, whatever, we want them to come away from their first trip, like, and love it as much as we do now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, I hate when people go and they come back and they didn't have fun. Like, that makes me so sad for them,
Yeah, me too.
And people underestimate how important first impressions are in everything, and even with something like Disney, like, that first trip is going to be make it or break it for how much you want to go back. So I think looking for these important signs and kind of, if we convinced one person today to not buy a brand new pair of shoes for their next trip,
or to at least break them in.
Right, that's one person that's going to walk away from this and feel a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there anything else you guys want to talk about for a couple of minutes? Like just some happy things? Or I think we're good.
I think that was a nice note to end it on.
Well, that's going to do it for us today, guys. Thanks for joining us again on another episode of the Station 71 podcast. Like we said a little bit earlier, we're here to talk to you guys. That's the reason we're doing this show, is because we love Disney. And if you want to reach out to us, like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Station71pod, Twitter @Station71pod, Instagram @Station71podcast, and you can shoot us an email. We will gladly read your emails live on the show and give you some pointers, some tips, anything we can. But our email is station71podcast@gmail.com. While you're at it, be sure to subscribe to us on iTunes or anywhere that you get your podcasts. Leave us an iTunes review. We'll read them live as well, and that really helps us out tremendously. We hope you enjoy your ride, and we'll see you real soon.